Welcome to Ukraine Today. I'm Volodymyr Solokhub. Joining me now is the founder and CEO of Hermitage Capital, Mr. William Browder. Mr. Browder, welcome to Ukraine Today.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Browder, in your opinion, will the Russian people eventually realize that they are being stolen from, they are being lied to, they're being manipulated?
Well, I think that as the economic situation gets worse, it becomes more and more of a high probability. But you have to understand that there are two factors that will determine whether there's a Maidan in Russia. The first is how angry people get on one side. And then the second factor is how fearful, how much oppression, how much fear Putin can put into their minds on the other side. And right now the fear outweighs the anger. But as the economic crisis gets worse, the anger could get worse. Which means one natural reaction is for Putin to continue to raise the fear. And so it's an ongoing thing. But like for example, a couple weeks ago they passed a new law that allows the FSB to fire on crowds, basically legalizing what the Berkut did on Maidan, killing all of those demonstrators. And this is obviously Putin being afraid of a Maidan happening in Russia.
So do you think there is a probability that there might be a Maidan?
Well, there's a probability, but there's also a probability that
maybe they come, they'll be shot at.
Well, I think the greater probability is that Putin follows the North Korean Zimbabwe model of just continue to shut down, close down, and repress in hopes of keeping everything under control.
In one of your interviews, Mr. Browder, you said that in the beginning, Putin was all about stealing money. Now that he has stolen as much as he could, you also said that you consider him to be the richest person on the earth. And now that he has all the money he wants, all the money he needs, what is he after right now?
Well, now he's after staying alive. So what he understands is, so he stole all this money, and the money that he stole, he got, but he never offered. So he took the money for himself, and the Russian people didn't get any of that money. And so the Russian people started to grumble, and they started to get angry, and they started to demonstrate, and people were going out into the streets and demonstrating in Russia. And he understood that if he could never actually leave power, because if he left power, he would end up having his money taken away, he'd go to jail, and he might even die. And so for Putin, there is no exit strategy from his current money stealing, his sort of history of money stealing. And so now he's gotten all this money, and he realizes that he won't be able to keep it, and he might not be able to stay alive unless he stays in power. And so his only objective right now is to stay in power. And so why did he take Crimea? Why did he invade Ukraine? Why did he make Ukraine an enemy? I mean, Ukraine, if there's two countries that are more similar than any countries in the world, it's Russia and Ukraine. He created a fake enemy. It was like Wag the Dog, this famous American movie, where he created a fake enemy. He manufactured it completely out of propaganda on the airwaves in order to create a war so he could distract people's attention from the idea that they were being stolen from. And that's what the Ukraine war is all about. It's about his corruption.
Last year, Mr. Browder, you published a book, Red Notice, which is called Red Notice, a true story of high finance, murder, and one man's fight for justice. And in this book, you told your personal story of doing business in Russia, being thrown out of the country, and also the story of the tragic death of Sergei Magnitsky. And I noticed that on your personal website, the Russian version of the copy, you can download it for free. So how many Russian version copies were downloaded?
Quite a few. I mean, tens of thousands. It's a very popular book in Russia, and a very popular book in the West. It's we haven't been allowed to publish it in Russia. We couldn't. I mean, I have 25. It's published in 25 languages around the world. But the one country where there was a de facto ban on publication was Russia. Nobody is allowed. We can't promote it in Russia, but it's distributing sort of. This is the modern day samizdat, where it's being distributed sort of hand to hand over the internet, so that people can read it.
you said that there were tens of thousands copies downloaded in Russian language. Do you know of any effect your book had within Russian society?
Well,
it exposes quite
so
vigilantly
Putin hates the Magnitsky story and hates me, because what my story does more than any other story is it proves that Putin is not a nationalist but a crook. Because here the story is very simple. The story of Sergei Magnitsky is about a young patriot who sees a terrible crime being committed against his country, reports the crime, and then discovers that the government cares more about the people who stole the money than they do about him. And those people then torture him, kill him. The government covers up the crime, and then they put him on trial. And then Putin personally gets involved in the cover-up of a murder. And this story, there is no plausible deniability for Putin and for the Russian government in this story. This is a story of just true evil. And people always say, well, Putin doesn't know about this, or Putin doesn't know about that. Putin, in this case, knows about everything. And he got on stage and he lied about the death of Sergei Magnitsky and tried to cover it up. And so for anybody who knows this story, this shatters the illusion of Putin.
When you say that Putin knows about everything, are you saying that he learned about this story after all happened, or he was in this fraud from the very beginning? Because when I was reading your book, and when I was also watching these 4 serious clips which you made, which your team made, called The Untouchables, which exposed and detailed and proved the theft by the, I would say, mid-level government officials, tax officials, and the Ministry of Interior officials, the theft from the state budget of 230 US million, and they were trying to frame you along the way. I couldn't believe that this has gone under the radar of President Putin or his inner circle. So was it really the case, or he was in it from the very beginning?
Well, so I believe that this is just one of thousands, maybe 10,000s of crimes. There's so much money being stolen like this, you can't even imagine. And I would imagine that the minister who's in charge of this particular enterprise, there would be a cabinet minister in charge who gets a lot of the money. But I'm sure that Putin gets his cut of every crime in the country. Did he know about it? Was he sitting there plotting and scheming? Surely not. He's got more important things to do. But I'm sure he receives a cash flow from all of these crimes. And most importantly, he definitely did know after the crime was committed, when he started to get involved in the cover-up. And there we have proof.
You certainly know how to fight the information war against the Russian government. You have been doing this for many, many years. For what you're seeing the Ukrainian government is doing right now, what would you advise them to do additionally or differently to be able to effectively combat the Russian propaganda machine?
Well, the thing that worked for us was just taking granular, raw facts and presenting them in a simple way so that everybody could understand what was going on. And so every time the Russians would do something, we would just collect all the facts of what they did, court cases in Russia and documents, etc., and we put it on a website, and we put it into press releases, and on a granular, day-by-day basis, we shared with the world what was going on. And it's not about propaganda; it's about just sharing proper information. And it may be easier in a certain way for a small group like us to do it than for a big country like Ukraine to do it. But there has to be a very sort of day-by-day, granular, sort of evidence-based expose of what the Russians are doing. And if it's done without any slant or any bias, but just evidence-based presentation of the facts speak for themselves. One doesn't have to go beyond that. And it's just presenting it over and over and being very persistent and having all this stuff out there.
How do you make sure that the people believe your facts and not the facts which are being put forth by the other side?
Well, the answer is that it's a struggle, it's a day-to-day struggle. We continue to this day of them putting out lies that we have to counteract. But over a period of time, their credibility continues to sink and our credibility continues to rise. And I think the same thing can be true with Ukraine if it follows this strategy.
Well, let's hope that Ukraine indeed will be able to follow this strategy and fight the information war in the right way. Mr. Browder, many thanks for finding the time to come and talk to us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This has been the founder and CEO of Hermitage Capital, once the largest foreign investor in Russia, and now Putin's #1 enemy, Mr. William Browder. I'm Volodymyr Solokhub. Thank you for watching Ukraine Today.